So it is life-changing.
This is the Financial Side of Life podcast, episode 30.
Welcome to the Financial Side of Life podcast. Our mission, to empower you with smart financial strategies and show that it's possible to get a college education, save, invest, retire, or do whatever makes sense to help you live your best life. We'll meet amazing people and professionals who will share stories about how they do it, and together we hope to bring a little sanity to your complex financial life. And now, here's your host, Certified Financial Planner Pro and founder of Avaya Financial Planning, Angie Furubotten-LaRosee.
Hey everybody, it's Angie Furubotten-LaRosee here, and I want to welcome you to the Financial Side of Life podcast. Today, my guest is Sokhom Sek, and she's the president of NexusPoint here in the Tri-Cities. We recently connected at a social and had a great conversation. And I learned a lot about her, but there was just things that came up and I wanted to learn more. And I thought she would make a great guest for my podcast. So I was really excited that she agreed to come on. And so I want to welcome Sokhom to the program. Thank you for coming. Welcome.
Thank you, Angie, for inviting me. I'm really excited to be able to share my story and see where it goes and what others can learn from me and et cetera. So
Exactly.
I'm really excited for this.
Thank you. Well, thanks for coming on. All right. And so what I usually like to do for just, starters is to ask you a little bit about yourself. What can you tell us about yourself, your background, things to do with your childhood, your education, all those kinds of things?
Well, sure. So I've been living here in the Tri-Cities for 10 years, exactly. In January of 2010 that was when I moved out here to the Tri-Cities, and I've been here since, and I love it. But I grew up in Long Beach, California,
okay.
My entire childhood up until when I graduated high school, and then I moved to Portland, Oregon, and I lived there for just a little over a decade before moving out here. And so I find myself gravitating away from the big cities into the smaller rural life, but now we're seeing that the Tri-Cities is growing, so I might just move again. We'll see. But my background a little bit is I came here to America when I was 2 from Cambodia, and that's because I have a Cambodian background. Both my parents are Cambodian, and they're actually Cambodian refugees during the time of the Cambodian genocide that took place in Cambodia. I was born in a refugee camp in Thailand, and my family eventually, it was my mom, dad, my little sister, and myself was eventually sponsored, and we were able to come here to America. And I first moved, we were living in Philadelphia, and my little brother was born there, and we were there for a little bit before we moved to Long Beach, California, and I guess the rest is history there.
About what era or, what time frame was that?
So we came here in 1982.
82, okay.
1982. And so I practically, learned English here. I was still a toddler, still really young, and was able to complete high school and be the first to graduate. So just a first generation kid growing up in America. Kind of a typical story of a lot of immigrants that you hear. But yeah, I was, the family came out here to America in 1982 during this whole time of when the war was the war was just finishing and troops were being removed from Vietnam, and then the Cambodian genocide happened, and then we were lucky enough to be able to get sponsored, so.
Yeah, that's a very life-changing event, I imagine. Do you have family back in Cambodia?
So it is life-changing. My mom is the oldest of 12, and she left everybody behind in order to survive. Yeah. And my dad was the youngest of 4, and his entire family, they're gone. And my mom, she has some siblings who survived the war, but she was the only one out of her entire family that was able to come to America.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about visiting family back in Cambodia for quite a few years now, and it's just never happened. I think mostly that's because my parents just were not ready to go back, to just the trauma that they've dealt with, and of course the money, the immense amount of money that would be required to just go visit, because you just can't show up with nothing. Unfortunately, you have relatives that are dirt poor, where you should have some money to support them, and we grew up pretty poor, so it's just never happened.
Yeah, that's almost an event that someone like me can't even imagine, because I talk about this. I'm in the house I was raised in, right? So I'm from Pasco, but your story is just really almost unrelatable in some ways. It's almost like reading a magazine article or listening to a news show. It's what you hear on the news, and it's not supposed to be what somebody actually has lived through and gone through in their own personal lives. So I'm glad that you're able to talk about it a little bit today, because I think it's got to set the tone for things in your life, whether you acknowledge them or not. Just how you've been raised, your parents' experiences, how that has affected you over your upbringing and so on. And I'm just curious, because now you're at this company and you've got your own company. I wanted you to talk a little bit more about that as well. And what has that upbringing or the impact of these stories in your life, how does that come out in how you kind of manage your life today, manage your company today?
Sure. Well, I can't say that, growing up there weren't challenges, and some hard challenges, and some great lessons that I've had to learn just throughout life. And I would say where I am now, as far as being president of my own company, it just kind of grew organically as I was given opportunities in life. And that's essentially my story, is just that there are people that offered me opportunities and I took them. And that's where I am ending up now. And NexusPoint specifically, is, I guess, it encompasses and it embodies who I am as a person, because NexusPoint is a company that's built on this principle of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Mm-hmm. And if you follow my story with the Freedom Riders, which is a foundation or an organization that started when I was just in high school and is still going strong to this day, it's what shaped me and how I came to this conclusion of how I wanted to also affect societal change and be able to bring change about with what I know from my background and what I've been a part of, that has been such a huge part of my life and has made an impact, and it's just rolled into this business that I've just started up, which is NexusPoint.
So tell me a little bit more about the Freedom Riders, because that seems to have also impacted your business, management as well. So what is the Freedom Riders?
The Freedom Riders. So I grew up in Long Beach, California, in the 90s, during a time where there was a lot of gang violence and senseless violence that you see on the street. Also during a time when the LA riots happened. And I think the LA riots happened in 1992. And Long Beach is so close to LA, where we saw what the aftermath of what the riots did in LA, and it moved into Long Beach. I had an aunt who owned a clothing store, and we packed up all her clothes and stored them in our house because, it was going to be targeted. And it essentially was. And so we grew up during a time where there's a lot of violence and a lot of people feeling angst, and during that time. When I was in, I've also had a lot of violence inflicted on me growing up, because we grew up in a very impoverished area. I was living in areas where gang violence was all over. I've witnessed them. I've even personally been attacked, by a group of people when I was just 7 years old walking home. So it's very normal for me to see violence, and it's a very normal everyday part of my life. When I went to school, I went to high school, and my parents removed me from that high school because I ran away from home. I wasn't doing well, and I moved to Woodrow Wilson High School during my sophomore year in high school, and that's kind of when I met Erin Gruel, my teacher, who essentially got, I guess there were a group of students like myself who were just kind of written off the system. We're a bunch of hardcore students who didn't care about education, who knew nothing better other than just to try to fit in, to try to survive. And she essentially gained this group of students who didn't accept education, where she came in as a teacher, as a novice, really idealistic and wanted something more. And essentially, she taught us tolerance, because none of us in the class knew about the Holocaust. None of us knew anything about the plight of what the Jews went through. And from that, and from learning about tolerance and history repeating itself, she was able to use the lessons there to implement them in our own lives and to get us to share our own stories. And that's how the Freedom Writers just kind of snowballed and grew. And as we started writing, journaling our stories of the injustice in our own neighborhoods, in our own lives, and then eventually those stories became bounded in a book. It was published by Random House, and then the rest just kind of became history. And we've been just doing a lot of outreach and speaking engagements and connecting with communities and other students about these same lessons that we shared growing up, so that we can help them overcome their own obstacles and their own adversities in their lives. I guess essentially what the Freedom Writers did for me and NexusPoint was that, this power of inclusion I talk about, and that's what helped me survive during those tough times during my childhood and in high school. It was that I felt for once connected to a group of people that I used to, being a part of a gang group. And I wasn't in a gang, but I hung out with them. And it's all about racial inequality and trying to survive that. And so for once, this power of connecting with all my other students and my peers just connected me to, Mexicans and Blacks and whites, and we shared a commonality, and I learned that really young. And this power of inclusion is what I'm taking into my business now, and I'm trying to promote diversity and equity and inclusion with my business, because that's what I learned that has propelled me to make this world better, because that's how I see, and I learned that pretty early on, that we can't approach peace without having equality, and inclusion in our work life.
And so how is NexusPoint kind of promoting this concept? Because it is a pretty hot topic anymore, where we're seeing bigger companies actually focus on these topics, right, of diversity of all kinds, all kinds of different diversity, not just race, but gender and age and all different kinds of diversity. What is it that NexusPoint is doing to kind of promote that concept?
So I started NexusPoint last year, the beginning of last year, and I actually, when I started it, and it was from a passion of mine. And after I had started the company, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted a business that was able to reach out to organizations to help them promote this diversity, equity, inclusion principle. I didn't know really how to do that. So I started my business with that. And then I got online and I was reading more about the DEI principles. And I was learning that there is a whole, slew of companies and people out there that were doing this and promoting this. And I was actually quite surprised, because here I was just kind of like in this bubble thinking that, here's something that needs to happen, but there's already a whole community out there. I don't need to reinvent the wheel. Now I just got to go learn from them. And so NexusPoint, because it is just brand new, it was a start, it's just a startup. I'm trying to collaborate with other people in the area to see who's got these same principles, who are working in this, I guess, this environment already, and trying to collaborate with them to see if I can get any kind of mentorship opportunities there, and how I might grow my business that way, because NexusPoint is still trying to grow its capabilities regarding that. Now I have a part of this growing capabilities, I've definitely teamed up with Dana Engineering Inc., who I used to work for, and we've collaborated, and we've essentially started our own company called Dana Engineering Consultants, where I'm networking with him because he's been in the community for a while. Right. Everybody, most of the community knows about Dana Engineering Inc. And so I'm taking NexusPoint and Dana Engineering. We put this Dana Engineering Consultant so we can pursue Hanford work out there and federal work out there, and then that's how I can that's a part of the growing capabilities of my business. It's just right now, even though there's no diversity, equity, and inclusion in there, I'm hoping that as I grow my business, it will turn into that. As I staff people, those principles will come on board, and it will grow. And so I've been lucky enough to where we've won some contracts out there with Dana Engineering Consultants, and that will allow me to have a little bit of leverage to be able to bring NexusPoint on board, because now NexusPoint can say, hey, I have some contracts out here, I have the resources, I have the financial capability, and now it's up to me now to bring other people on board who have the specialty and the expertise in doing this to help me build upon my vision. And that vision is just to bring equity out there in the Hanford area, to bring more women out there, to bring people of color, and it doesn't reject people of white status or white male figures. It's just a principle of, if you accept people as they are, then you belong here too, and it's there to promote that message. And I'm kind of, so far I'm in the staffing portion of it. I would like to staff people, okay, and recruit people under that concept, but we're also looking at organizational change and issues that pertain to helping and training to help people out there understand that DEI is very important. I'm still growing my capabilities. I'm still open to opportunities and what that might be. I'm not closed off to how I can be successful with this. I've already am in the works of connecting with other folks and see how we can bring this message to the different businesses in our area.
Right. So Hanford is, for people who are from here, it's somewhat familiar, but I've tried to explain Hanford to people outside of the area. And even for me at times, it's kind of hard to understand the structure of everything out there. But in my mind, it's quite STEM related. You've got a lot of the science and engineering, and I would even say construction, kinds of activity out there, which in a lot of ways is very male heavy in my mind. And I feel like women are underrepresented in those careers in general, but I think out there in particular, it's just, I think even for some of the major employers like PNNL, it may be 25 to 35% is women in the workforce there, right, as their employees. And so women in my mind are underrepresented out there in particular. So are there things that can be done, like from your approach? Are you able to promote in the effort or in the spirit of trying to promote more diversity, different kinds of people? Are there things that can be done either just on your end or even by law? I don't know if there's any kind of legal structure, because we used to have some things that required there was more diversity, you know, smaller businesses, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned
Right.
businesses, things like that. And I'm not sure where things are at today with all of that.
Right. There is a huge push for more women in the STEM field, and you know, you're right, we're underrepresented in those areas, and the statistics are out there. NexusPoint is a disadvantaged woman-owned business, and a part of the I guess I got certified in those areas because in our state and probably nationwide, there is a huge push and objective to hire small women-owned businesses,
Mm-hmm.
and even in the federal arena, because they're trying to be more inclusive to, you know, an underrepresented subgroup of people,
Right.
which is women and minorities as well. So I saw the opportunity as I was going through school for my project management degree. I was learning a lot about this, and it was all new to me. And that's kind of when the seed was planted. I saw that as an opportunity to kind of start my business and see how I might be able to get opportunities because I fit that mold.
Mm-hmm.
And so NexusPoint is twofold in that it wants to promote the diversity, equity, and inclusion principle, as well as be able to fulfill those industry standards of hiring businesses that are minority owned and women owned. And so it's working to benefit, I feel like, affect societal change, as well as help our community fulfill those objectives, or help the industry fulfill those objectives.
Are you networking with other like minority-owned businesses or not?
Yeah. So I frequent, you know, our procurement technical assistance center.
Mm-hmm.
Is a great way for me to network with other small businesses.
PTAC,
and
right?
PTAC, exactly, and it's a great program out there for any small business or even any large business. But that's a way for me to connect and get to know other people in the area, as well as LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm connecting there as well. But if I see an opportunity where, like the Office of Minority and Women's Businesses, which is the certification agency to certify the women-owned businesses and minority businesses in our state, you know, they put out events as well where I attend, and I'm able to connect with other minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses.
Who is that again?
I think it's called the Office of Women and Minority Business Enterprise.
Is that a state or federal?
It's a state
group.
Yeah, it's our Washington state group.
Okay.
That does the certification.
Okay. I've attended, because I was just kind of curious to know more about kind of working with Hanford. So I've attended a Meet the Buyers event. Yeah. And they had a full day of talks and stuff. And I'm just kind of amazed. It was really interesting. I found, first of all, I thought it was very interesting. And I was amazed, though, at how complex it seemed to me. You know, and yet I met the gal, Jody O'Connor, I believe it is, at PTAC, and she's just seems so helpful. You know, she's like, just come and I'll help you and I'll walk you through. And not that I was looking for myself necessarily, but it's good resources because it's really important to this area, to the economy of this area. So I had other people in mind that I was kind of thinking of. As yourself, you know, going through this process, was it insurmountable? Was it easy? Was it, did you get a lot of help? You know, how did you get through this? Because just starting a business, first of all, is really kind of a challenge, you know.
Right.
But getting through all these hoops is also very challenging, I think.
It is very challenging, and there's a lot of information out there to learn as well. I think as long as you know some things is important, and then you just learn more as you are out there talking to people. Be open to that, because there's the industry is always changing.
Right.
Still a challenge to navigate this arena is I still am out there and I'm still networking, and I'm still shy and sometimes intimidated. So,
do you have any mentors or people who are kind of on your side, helping you?
Yeah. So I would say one of my biggest mentor was my old boss, Bill Dana, and I came on with him as a drafter, as a designer, and then when that work ended, I transitioned to doing proposal writing, helping him look for work, and that's when I just got immersed and thrown into this huge world of business development, and I attribute a lot of my success to him. He's got a successful business, and I trust him as a partner, and we have great communication. So right. I would say he's my biggest mentor here. And as far as other mentorship, and my teacher Erin Grudel with the Freedom Riders have been instrumental in my growth, my personal life.
Fantastic. What would you say is something that you're most proud of?
I guess just, overcoming fear is something that I would, starting this business is about overcoming fear. And to me, that is huge because a child of, of a Cambodian genocide. And so fear is constantly instilled in me, and I had to overcome all of that. And starting NexusPoint and developing this business is all about overcoming fear and really now focusing on success and being success minded. So I wouldn't say that starting this business is what I'm most proud of. Is I feel like I'm really truly now starting to tackle my fears.
And so what does success mean to you? What does that look like?
Success just means that I'm at a place where I'm happy with myself and the accomplishments I've done, and being able to give back to society in a way that's connected. To me, that's success. And if I can touch, a life and create changes for them, and that improves their life, then I'm successful.
Okay. So as we kind of wrap up our conversation, I like to ask people if you had some key advice, and I would say maybe you were speaking to someone who's interested in starting their own business or doing some other pretty important project that maybe they're very fearful to approach for whatever reason, what kind of advice might you give to them?
What I always tell everybody, even my own family, is that don't get stuck in your story. I always tell people, just have this hope and look for other stories that can help you to develop who you are. And you can change your mind at any time about what direction you want to take or who you want to be as a person, and some ideals about you, or even the ideals you once held about yourself, because we're always constantly growing. And if we allow ourselves and open up to the universe can provide, then we can live a richer life.
Fantastic. All right. Well, that is excellent advice, I think. Where can people reach you if they want to connect with you?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn, and they can just type in my name in there, Sokhom Sek, as well as through my NexusPoint website, which is www.theexocollaborative.com. And there you'll find my email as well as my contact information.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Sokhom, thank you so much. It's always just like you were talking about, if you can just kind of open yourself up to opportunities. And, we just met a few weeks ago and this new opportunity presented itself. I'm so grateful that you came on and would be willing to talk about your story with us today. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Angie, for letting me share the story.
I want to thank my guests for stopping by the podcast and sharing their unique story with us today. And thank you for listening to today's episode. Feel free to visit aveafp.com, where you will find show notes and links to items that were mentioned in today's podcast. I invite you to come back often, listen again and again. Feel free to leave a review at iTunes or your favorite podcast app. Thank you for listening in. I want to thank my guest for joining. I want to thank my guest for stopping by the booth.